Okay. And I won't lie, I don't know how I got it from the Laurentians.
You just stumbled upon it.
Like I was following along and I made it to some database and then I found it and I marked it on my tab. And then, so this is what it looked like when I went back. I went, I might need to ask about that.
It looks like you have, like, offhand, it looks like you have all the pieces. Oh, bibme.org is the other one that a lot of students I know use. I'll make sure to like list them and put them somewhere so you guys have easy access to them. Because you have the authors, you have the title, the making the DSM-5 is the title. Spring year 2003.
But like the DOI is like the Dewey system for the Laurentian Library.
Yeah, normally like it would be DOI. You're right. It wasn't complex in that. I'll grab it from the chat after. Okay. But usually you'd have like the DOI and just the numbers. You're right. It's like they almost combined the website and the DOI together. I don't know.
Okay.
Just do what you can. Honestly,
it looks funny, so I'm glad that my sense of it looking funny was correct.
Yeah. And honestly, like I said, periods, commas, if it looks, in French we say à peu près, if it looks kind of sort of correct, I'll just be like, yeah, that's close enough. Like it's not, you guys have enough to worry about with all your other courses. I'm not going to be the one to be like, no, but like you have to have obviously titles, authors, titles, years, generally speaking, have all the pieces, and I'll just check it off. And just a note, like a reminder, works cited bibliographies are always alphabetical order by last name. So regardless of what system you're using, you're always going to have, or I shouldn't say last name because sometimes there aren't titles, but it's always going to be whatever that first letter is all the way to the left, you're going to order them in alphabetical order. So that's just across the board. Your bibliographies or works cited are always going to be organized that way. So that's just an FYI, a reminder, depending on if you've seen that before.
On that OWL site, if you kind of do all your citations at the same time, it automatically puts it into order for you, and then you can copy all and paste. It's really nice. It's
perfect.
Easy to use.
So you have Beth's and Jesse's endorsement for the OWL at Purdue site. So with 2 students' reviews, I think that that's a good place to start if you're really not sure of how to structure it. But worry less about, like, make sure all of your sources are in the draft, but worry a little bit less about that piece for Friday. Worry about the content and the actual essay itself. And then it's like a learning process for both of us, because I normally have to remind myself what goes where for MLA in particular, because I don't use that one anymore. But anyways, so don't stress too much about that piece for the Friday. All right, so for tonight, so this week, the topics are going to be diversity, culture, and communication. And then, so that will be like the last little piece before we get into the debates, so the prep and the questions and the actual debates in 2 weeks. So I wanted to end with that kind of specifically on Thursday. We'll go over communication styles and conflict management and things like that will hopefully help you during the debates and beyond. So for tonight, we'll just start with the cultural piece and diversity. Sorry, I can't find my. Inside our store, I lost my room. Oh boy. Luckily, you guys are patient. Green one. Yes? Okay, beautiful. Except, sorry, hang on. I lost my pieces. Goodness, it's like it's been weeks since I've done this. All right. my people, all my things. So you'll see that on D2L under week 7, I added a whole bunch of documents already. So I should be referencing most of them tonight. If I don't, I'll at least show you where they are so that you know what has to do with tonight and what's going to be in preparation for the learning portfolio. So there will be pieces tonight that you can do as we go, or keep them for the last minute, but they will be part of the learning portfolio as well. You don't have to complete all of them. So I'll mention what we're doing tonight as they come up so that you can reference those documents under week 7 on D2L. So in the tab de méthode, table of contents, under week 7, there's 6 or 7 documents, 6 documents right now. So we'll go through some of those tonight as well. All right, so tonight, diversity, culture, and then Thursday, like I said, communication skills, teamwork, and conflict resolution. Very brief overview because I'm not in any way an expert. But I wanted to start tonight with a word cloud or answer garden is what I set up. So if you guys go to this, so either type in what you see on the screen or I'll put it in the chat. And just briefly, what words, phrases come to mind if you were to be asked what the word culture means to you? So it can be an example of culture, a synonym of culture, a brief maybe definition of it. But what comes to mind when I say, what does culture mean to you? So take a few minutes to go into the answer garden and type up your answers so we can get kind of your perspective on what that word means to you before we get into what I have to say about it. Again, not an expert, but I can share with you my personal experiences. And this is something that you guys can probably share a lot about your own experiences as well. So the answer garden I put in the chat. If you click on that, you should be able to put whatever word you want to define culture. Oh, sorry. Again, I'm seeing them as if like I'm sharing, but I'm not. So we have beliefs, cuisine, customs, tradition, community, the way that you conduct yourself, your heritage, groups and togetherness, activities, those all came up. Oh, awesome. Every time I refresh. So if I go like this, I should be able to do that. Hopefully you guys still see that. So custom has come up more than once as one definition synonym. Okay, so shared beliefs, set of behaviors. Yeah. Traditions, society rules, for sure that plays into it. Different from someone else or from other cultures. Yeah. Cool. So, I mean, there's no wrong answer necessarily because your culture is very subjective to you, but definitely that whole aspect of tradition, customs, and heritage, what you've learned based on maybe your family, based on your society, that all plays into how, the word was your behavior and the way you conduct yourself. That all has an influence on it. It goes back to the values piece that we did a while ago. Cool. So thank you for that. Taboos. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool words that came up there. And I'll make sure to put that into the copy of the PowerPoint so you guys have that from you specifically, because every year it's different. So keeping in mind that everyone answered a little bit differently and interpreted culture and what it means to you, it's very subjective. That is something to keep in mind when we talk about cultural differences and interacting with people that are different than you, because that has an impact on the way that you're going to interact with someone and the way that you're going to communicate with someone. So that's the link there. We're going to touch a little bit more on diversity and culture in the sense of how does it impact the way that you act and react in different social and communication contexts? So not that there's necessarily a right answer, but it is culture normally refers to what a group of people have in common with each other, and it came up, and how that particular group of people, what they have in common is different than what another group of people will have in common. And then I like this image here to me because I'm super visual. It's the way you think, act, and interact. Okay, so that's what a person's culture can be. And I think it came up as well in the word cloud. It's the values, beliefs, and assumptions that you share with people. So that particular culture, and you can identify and belong to many different cultures because every different shared group will have different sets of beliefs. So keeping that in mind, and I know that you probably have already seen these types of activities before, but we're going to get into the analogy of culture as an iceberg in a slide or two. So keep that in mind because your culture is very different than someone else's and what you consider important and part of your culture. So if we're trying to define our own culture and what you would call your cultural profile, it's what are the things that define you and how they've had an impact on your identity. So when you're thinking about your cultural profile, some of the things that will have an influence on that is your family. So that goes into the entire, all those words, custom, heritage, tradition. Normally those come from family and or society. You also have your different beliefs and the importance that you put on work and work habits. So for example, the concept of time comes up a lot in different cultures. Different cultures have different relationships with what, like a traditional clock. What is the importance of being on time? What is the importance of time as a concept? So all of those things will play into these different aspects of our lives as well. So it's things to keep in mind. There. So this is not by no means the be all end all of the concept of culture, but the reason that the analogy of the iceberg was chosen is because there's a difference between what we see, so what's on the surface, the fact that 90% of an iceberg is not considered. Up to 90% of the iceberg is under the surface of the water, so you cannot see it. So it's the same thing with this analogy and this comparison to your culture. So you have what we would consider more surface culture or things that are more visible. So things like food and music and things that you can see and or see, touch, feel, things that you would use your senses to be able to discover about someone or a group of people. Whereas the deeper culture are things that motivate what you see on the surface or are based on the values that are part of someone's deeper culture, but they're things that you can't see. So you don't know why someone made a certain choice, whether it's how they dress or what they listen to or what they eat. It could just be a personal choice, but it also could be something that is rooted in something a lot deeper, in something that's normally more, not normally, but it's based on the things that you identify with. So the fact that I like bright colors, it could just be because bright colors make me happy, but it could also be that culturally speaking, that has some kind of deeper meaning for me. And you won't know what motivates me and what affects my decisions because it is under the water, under the surface. So it's to consider all of that first from your own perspective. Who are you? And knowing that that's also going on with every other person that you're interacting with. The fact that what I believe doesn't necessarily coincide with what someone else believes doesn't mean we can't still interact and have valuable and productive and effective conversations and interactions. It's just something to keep in mind. So all of these are examples of less concrete concepts, like they're very abstract when you're talking about someone's deeper culture that potentially motivates more of those tangible aspects. So all of these are examples of things that could be in your deeper culture that are impacting and influencing who you are as a person and how you identify. So all of the abstract and less tangible things are what's going to go under the water of your iceberg. So this is something that I like to encourage students to do, and it is part of the portfolio as an activity. Some students have told me that the iceberg limits them, and that's okay. But just consider what characteristics or traits would someone else use to describe you? Those are things that would most likely fall into your surface culture because they're things that you let other people see. Whereas they don't know why you act or behave that way. That's something that only you know. So that would be considered your deeper culture. So some students don't like to be boxed into the iceberg, and that's fine. But the activity and what I'm looking for in the portfolio in particular is what to you is your cultural profile, or what defines your culture, you specifically. So that's what I'm looking for more than that filling out an iceberg. So don't get stuck on the iceberg if that's what's going to stop you, but really just think about who you are and if we go back to the beginning, what are the values and the concepts that are most important to you? So that's what I mean. I think I literally listed it as the iceberg activity, or the cultural iceberg, something like that, in the list of portfolio submissions. But focus a little bit less on the iceberg piece and more on the cultural piece. I don't know what you wrote, Justin. I clicked on something. I tried to Google what he meant, and I ended up with the video. Justin, are you there to elaborate on your chat comment?
The Johari window is basically an exercise where it's what you show to individuals or groups, what you reveal to them, what you don't reveal, and what people basically see you as. So from outside of your personal concepts or ideas of yourself, people are always afraid to ask, say your best friend, what do they truly think of you? Like uncensored and, unfiltered, in a polite fashion. But, if there's aspects about you that you may not see because you're you every day, right? So there's like 4 major categories that you basically would, give away one of your secrets, or give away, something that you haven't disclosed to people before because you keep it close to yourself. Or, is there things that other people see about you every day that you may not necessarily think of yourself that way because you don't see it? You're you, right? So it was an interesting activity, certainly.
I never heard of that before, and I love it. So as Justin was speaking, I found an article about it and explained it has it in 4 quadrants. Definitely, but like I said, I'm open to the exercise of self-reflection, and like Justin was saying, the whole what other people see versus what's more internal. So any representation of that, super interesting. I agree, Jesse. Apparently this is very common in communication. So I appreciate the share, because that's, like I said, a lot of students get stuck on this iceberg analogy. So
I've done it twice. I did it in my college course for PSIP, or basically like a similar course to police foundations. And I'm doing it again in interpersonal communications here at Laurentian as well.
Very cool. So I will definitely add that, especially for those who've already done it. I'll like either or. But for me, the important part is just that self-reflection piece, and the fact that for a lot of communication students, that speaks to them more, go for it. The activity, I have students who literally end up just being a list, and they separated it with a line and went, this is what people see, this is what they don't see. It doesn't matter to me what it looks like, and that kind of goes to who you are as well, the way that you choose to share that piece. So whether or not you want to choose the communications type, not type, but the communications discipline approach, that's totally okay with me. So I'll add both. I'll make the changes in the
Here's another one for you. Here's another one for you then. You could have a big open field with a massive singular oak tree sitting there, and what they see above the ground and what's below the ground in the roots.
Yep. You guys can interpret it however you want. You can use any kind of visual or none at all. A lot of students don't like to use visuals. That's okay too. But
where's an art student when you need one?
Yeah, the premise, it's not going to be me, and no offense, I don't want to single out Beth. Beth would be the one to come up with, no offense, Beth would be the one to draw us a pretty tree, since she did such a good job with our star person last week. But you're going to get a stick man out of me if I did it.
I love trees.
A tree, a flower, all of those. The concept is still the fact that there's layers to who you are and what your culture is and how people see you and how you see yourself. So that's the exercise. However you want to present it, go nuts. Just so you know, the iceberg is also used as an analogy, and I'm sure the communication students will give me a bunch more awesome ideas when we get to that part. But the iceberg comes back because I also managed to find one for the concept of communication. So just bear with me on Thursday when it comes back again. So whatever version you'd like to present in your portfolio, go for it. So this is the culture iceberg, and then I tried to do it for myself, like very not high end, very at the high level. Last night I tried to do it, but if I'm gonna ask you to do it, you might as well have me do it as an example. So really, it's the fact that visibly, I think a lot of people will know that I love color. I mean, that blue wall is chosen on purpose. So those are things that people will use to describe me. But then what motivates and what does that tie into something that's more important to me that other people don't necessarily know? Those would be the less visible things. So I tried to give examples of the more abstract concepts. They all come back to what was in this one as well, or whatever you choose to include. There's no wrong answer. And honestly, last night as I was doing this, because I was on the computer, it had to be words because I'm not techie enough to do other things. But like, had I had a printout, I would have drawn you pictures. So that's where I'm at when it comes to my representation of myself. So that's how I would have presented it as a student. I would have drawn like a musical note, and I would have had like a rainbow or a color wheel to show the colorful piece. And that's my personality coming out at the same time. So it can be however you choose to present it visually and organize it, whether or not it's not an iceberg, go for it. So the important piece for this one is really just what's visible, what's less visible, what's not visible, but really who you are. So there's other examples that I have in the online portfolio as well. Whatever you choose to do with that, it's totally make it your own for that particular activity. But that's something that does come up a lot as this example. Apparently this is not like the other example is a lot more common than I thought. So there are different examples depending on, I guess, your discipline, or how old you are. I'm not sure. So there's lots of different options. But that's what I'm looking for the iceberg activity. Really, it's your cultural profile. Who are you and what is your culture? So if we bring it back one step into the whole concept of diversity is the fact that there are differences among people. And the fact that it could be between, if we go back to the concept of culture, it's the fact that there's two different groups of people, and I can be part of different groups. And there are things that we have in common, and there are things that we have that are different from each other. And that's what makes us diverse. And it can be based on things that we see, things that are more visible. So we can assume certain things in what we see, but that doesn't necessarily mean that matches that person's identity. So you have to consider that as well. So something like an age or a gender or the skin color, those are things that we can see and we make assumptions based on that. And unfortunately, we tend to want to categorize everything that we see. So we try and put them in these boxes. That doesn't necessarily match what's underneath, underwater, in the roots, whatever example you're using, that doesn't necessarily match the person's identity and their culture. So keep all of that in mind. What we see doesn't necessarily mean, it's not the whole picture. So those are things that we can be grouped by, whether or not I group myself into certain categories based on my own identity, or whether or not that's legally speaking or whatever the case may be. Even just the example of what a mature student is, we've tried to put you in a box based on a particular criteria that we can normally, it's something you can see. Things that are less visible, your religion, your educational experiences, your family status, your sexual orientation, all of those pieces that have to do, that are more in line with how I identify, those are things that you can't see. So generally speaking, cultural competence is the fact that we're able to understand and appreciate the differences among people and among groups of people, and the fact that you are adjusting your thinking and behaviors so that it's a more positive environment and a more positive experience and relationship between people of different backgrounds, whatever the case may be. So there are two of many, many models, continuums that I want to show you, which for the longest time I presented the Bennett's model of cultural competence. So the whole idea of we're different, how do we move towards positive interactions? So one is the Bennett's model of cultural competence. So it's, the continuum is either you're more ethnocentric, your tendencies are ethnocentric or ethno-relative. So the fact that someone who completely denies there being any kind of differences between people, that's a complete denial, and it's on the ethnocentric side. And then your goal is to move along this continuum towards, in this particular model, it's towards integration, where you can interact confidently, positively, effectively, comfortably with people of many different cultures, and that you are, the awareness that you have of those differences has an impact on your daily interactions. So this is one visual of this. I think I added a whole bunch of visuals just in case this one wasn't super clear. This one has examples from one end to the other. So we can find ourselves anywhere along this continuum at any given moment in any situation. So it's that whole piece of recognizing, how am I feeling? How am I reacting? And how do I move more towards, on this model, ethno-relative stages, where it's acceptance, adaptation, I said that right, and integration. So whether it's I'm completely denying there's differences, there's the idea of there's differences, but one is better than the other. That's a perspective and a stage that we can be in. Or the fact that, yeah, everyone is different and I accept that everybody is different, but what are you doing about it? So that those pieces play into it as well, because there's just, yeah, okay, we'll focus on what we have in common versus what we don't have in common. So all of these different pieces play into how we interact with people of different cultures. So Bennett's is one. I misspoke. So this is Bennett's. He doesn't have the word continuum in his. Like it's the same as 6, like there's still 6 phases in this continuum. Again, you're going from one end to the other of the continuum. These are fancier words. They're going to be very similar in how they're describing each stage or phase in the continuum. So here, this is just an awful visual. So I put it in a pretty tableau here. So if you were comparing to Bennett's, this would be the ethnocentric side, so more to the left, when we're beginning to, we don't necessarily even want to recognize that there are differences between people. and groups of people. So there's only cultural destructiveness or denial in Bennett's model is the fact that either I'm completely just ignoring the fact that there are any differences. That's what I'm doing. I'm just completely denying there's only one way of doing things. It's just like there's no other way. There's no everybody is the same. There are no differences. So that's not the most. Well, first of all, you're not showing any type of cultural competence, and that's the goal, is to be able to communicate and interact with different cultures. So you want to move towards different stages in this continuum. So one step beyond that would be cultural incapacity, the second one. And then, so I underlined the key differences, the key concepts. So it's, okay, so I go from, nope, there's no differences whatsoever to, okay, there's some differences, but that's all I care about. It's not really I don't look deeper into the issues. What are the differences? It's just like, yeah, we're all going to do our own little thing. We're all in our own groups. That's all. So I'm not really going beyond that. So it's one step above destructiveness, or broken down somewhere, but I can't seem to. Defense would be based on Bennett's model. And then cultural blindness is the fact that, well, even if we're groups, we're pretty much all the same. I don't really see any reason to go beyond that. So a lot of these are very similar in that, first of all, you have to recognize that not everyone is the same, and you want to move towards the thought and the feelings of, yeah, this can be a really positive experience. We're different, and how do we work together? Not in spite of, but because of our differences. How is this going to be a richer experience for everybody involved? So these would be ethnocentric on Bennett's model, scale, whatever we're calling it, and this continuum where we move towards ethno-relative, or moving towards more positive interactions, is the fact that in pre-competence, I'm actually looking to understand what these differences are, and I'm hoping to do something about it. So if you want to look at it as more like passive versus active, or like inaction versus action, it's we want to move towards how do I involve myself in these interactions with other people in different cultures. Cultural competence. So one way to develop that further is to seek, here it's actively seeking advice. So it's, okay, how do I meet different needs? How do I go about making sure that everyone feels safe and comfortable in these environments or interactions? So competence, and then proficiency. Ooh. So that's where I'm actually going beyond just seeking advice and what can I do. It's actually promoting. So the fact that, yeah, this is how we are guiding principles. This is how we motivate our actions and our decisions, is the fact that this is part of our everyday culture, for lack of a better word. It comes up to the same thing. So continuum, model, whatever we want to call them, it's really taking note of my own, we're going to talk about prejudice. I'm going to present briefly prejudice, our own, why can't I think of the word? Perceptions, and how are they affecting our interactions with other people and other cultures, and the fact that there is a lot more chance of miscommunication, and whether or not it's intentional of, I have no words in English tonight. Misinterpretations, not the word I want, but we'll use that for now until the other word comes back to me. So, keeping in mind, so this is another way of viewing this continuum, which doesn't look like continuum, but anyways. So the fact that whether or not you see differences among people in groups as a positive or a negative, that's going to influence how you react in certain situations. So there are 8 scenarios that I would like for you guys to discuss in smaller groups of what would be the feelings and the actions of the people involved in these scenarios. And there's 8 scenarios. They're pulled from a intercultural communication or intercultural training package. So they're meant to kind of jar you because these are potentially things that you or someone you know have witnessed or lived through. So these are examples that are possible and most likely they can be absolutely things that have happened. They might not all seem relevant, but they're there to respectfully be able to discuss as a small group where does this situation fall along this continuum or along that model or whatever the case may be, but what are maybe some of the issues and the preconceptions that people had in that particular scenario that make it not a very effective way of recognizing and promoting differences among people. So these are mostly pulled from they're mostly business. Well, no, they're not all business. Some of them are business type scenarios, but it's just they're like 1-2 liners of potentially stereotypical situations for different types of cultures, and that's part of the reason why they were put into this particular training package. So there's 8 scenarios that I'd like for you guys to discuss in breakout rooms, and just not necessarily for answers, because this is kind of like, I'm not an expert in this by any means, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's more just discuss the 8 scenarios and see what are the obstacles, what are the issues, what makes it a negative versus a positive, ethnocentric, ethno-relative. What are some of the flags that come about when you read the scenario, and how can we improve the situation in which these people would be in so that we can have more positive and effective interactions among people. So the examples are on D2L. Stop share. Can I share a different screen? They're called the Bennett model scenarios. Make it a little easier to download them and share it. They're on D2L. Week 7, Bennett model scenarios is what they're called. And I'm going to share it in the chat as well, because I think that might be easier. It's a PDF. So I really just want this to be an open, respectful conversation among breakout rooms, to just kind of discuss how to improve these scenarios. What are the issues when it comes to communicating across cultures? That work, it says sent successfully. I assume that means you guys got the PDF in the chat. I'm sure you'll let me know. So 8 scenarios. Pick a few to chat about with your colleagues, and then we'll come back as a group to kind of figure out what were your interpretations, what are your suggestions or recommendations for how either you could improve the situation specifically, because there's going to be, some of them are very specific examples, and some of them are more a general conversation about, would you approach it differently? Would you act differently? How can we improve that particular scenario? Does that make sense? I know I said that in a bunch of different ways, but I'm hoping that makes more sense. So the PDF is there in the chat or on D2L. I'm going to split you up into we can do 5 groups of 3 because I can do that math. I'm going to split you up in little groups, and I'll give you guys till 5 to chat about this, and then we'll come back in the larger group to have final thoughts about the 8 scenarios, how to develop your cultural competence specific to these scenarios.
So So to make sure that I'm getting this right, we're basically taking these 8 scenarios and breaking them down into these 2 major categories and then the 2 subcategories after that.
So that's where it got a little bit confusing. So like if you can get to that point, yeah, like if you can try to associate a particular stage or whatever we're calling them to each scenario, go for it. But generally speaking, for each of those 8 scenarios, what's the problem? What is the issue at hand? Or if there is an issue, some of them might be, yeah, this is a very productive, positive environment for people of different cultures and just generally accepting of differences. So if you want to get into the specifics, go for it. But it's just a general conversation to have with a smaller group of people, of classmates. I feel like I'm going to go from room to room to make sure this makes sense because I feel like I just didn't explain that well. So 8 scenarios, talk in a smaller group about how to improve it if it needs improving, or what works if it is a demonstration and an example of cultural competence. So I put in the document these one with 6 boxes. So you can compare it to the first page if you want, but just have a general discussion with your classmates about the entire concept of cultural competence and whether or not these are examples, good examples or counter examples. It took me that long to find the create breakout room button, just so you know. Okay.
Hey man, what's going on? I guess it's just me and you, I guess. And I don't know, she wants us to talk about the 8 scenarios that she listed in that thing she chatted in the thing she linked in. I don't know. She said she just wants us to have like some discussions about them and talk about like if the people are like being culturally aware or like blind or ignorant or whatever kind of stuff. Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's Romeo. I mean, she gave us still 5, right?
Yeah, I think she said she'd come get us at 5, but I think she said there was only going to be about 3 or 4 people in every group. She wanted to make lots. So.
Yeah. So we're supposed to look at the 8 scenarios and then just talk on them, basically.
That's kind of what I got from what she was saying there. Is just to kind of choose a few scenarios and just have a discussion about.
I think you keep getting muted and unmuted.
Now can you hear me?
Yep. I think one easy way to do it is maybe we can each pick one, like, and then we'll all talk about it. So like four scenarios in total, and then it can start from anyone who wants to pick one first.
Yeah, some of them are pretty easy to kind of identify. Like people are pretty ignorant in a lot of them.
I'd say like the first one I came to my attention was the number 4, sort of a stereotype that people give to Latin Americans. So I think you'd put that under, let's see, like cultural incapacity, I guess, because it says perpetuates stereotypes.
Yeah, and then it would go down probably to cultural destructiveness because the differences are seen as a problem, right?
Yeah, I think in a sense he's perceiving that like the Latin Americans, because they perceive time differently and they're late, like he's sort of putting them under the bus, sort of.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, which other one can we?
One that's not so bad is number 6, where it says, "I'm a heterosexual. My son's gay. Feels comfortable with gay friends in the community." Like he seems like he's, like even though
Yeah, I think that would be basic competency.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he's not against it, but he's also not like actually like routing for it. But he's someone who like tolerates and has,
Yeah, I find I get that a lot. Like if you hear someone say like, "Oh, like my son is gay, but I'm heterosexual," it's like you don't need to say that, like.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit. It's like saying, "Oh, I have a black friend."
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's unnecessary, right?
Very unnecessary, but still, it would be like basic competency. So
yeah, but at least he's trying.
Yeah. Maybe number 7 too could be cultural destructiveness, since it's like ever since I came from Egypt, I've tried to be totally American because the U.S. is a much better place than where I came from.
Yeah, like he's kind of like destroying his own culture because he wants to be more American, right? Doesn't want to be Egyptian.
I feel like a lot of people actually do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, women are not aggressive enough. They'll never make it to upper management.
Oof.
Sounds sexist much.
Yeah, that's harsh.
Yeah.
That's
Incapacity, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it could also be a little bit of cultural blindness, maybe. Yeah.
Number 3, when he go ahead. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I think the point of it is just meant to be like, people do say these kind of things, right? And like when it comes to handling them, like on a person-to-person basis, it can be pretty challenging. But some of these things are positive. Like number 3 says, when I provide medical care, I try to put myself in my patient's shoes. That's a pretty good thing to do, right? Because when you're providing medical care, obviously you're managing ethnicities, so it's it's always good to think, like, what are they gonna
sort of a mutual relationship with the
exactly.
Well, by the way, quick question, guys. I'm not usually in this class. The assignment for like the argumentative essay, is there a deadline for that or something?
Yeah, like the outline was due, I think, like a week or something ago, and the rough draft. Yeah, a rough draft is due this Friday, and then there's a completed essay, and I'm not 100% sure when that's due, but yeah. What
Okay.
do you know what group you're in for the debates?
Sorry?
There's debates coming up in a few weeks. Do you know what group you're in or anything about that?
No, I probably wasn't in class.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, after this, if you can message me. So we're given actual like debates, right? Or not just ones that we thought of?
Yeah, no. So I think like the premise is that everyone kind of chose during the class. They chose a topic, and I believe the topic was like social media, whether it brings people together or apart. And then she kind of tossed us into randomized groups. There's 4 groups, and I know personally I'm in group 4. She has it up on D2L, so if you wanted to go take a look at that, then
Okay, I'll check that after the class.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thanks. I think we still have 3 minutes left. We could probably pick 1 or 2 more.
All right. I don't really understand 5. Like it starts off pretty rough there. Like the guy says, or the girl or whatever. I don't think it's necessary to study other cultures. We all just need to learn how to care for their disease. I like. Is that like an attack on their culture? Like calling their culture a disease? Is that what that is? Do you think?
Yeah, that sounds pretty off. I don't know why someone would say that.
Yeah, that's.
Does he think his own culture has their disease?
Yeah, right. Like as if like someone else is going to come in, like with a different culture and then like change his, and that's like a disease, I guess.
Yeah,
Is what I get from
this
it.
probably like cultural destructiveness.
Yeah, because
Sees every other culture as not right, and that's a disease.
Yeah.
Mostly see it with some religious groups and like their arguments against like like the LGBT groups. They see it as like a disease or some sort.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird to read these things. Like my partner's parents are like super Christian, and like they're like I've legit heard them like say something like that before. And, like it's very bad. Like they look at all of their cultures kind of like an interruption to their life almost.
Yeah, but it's funny because like one main thing that's taught like across board these religions is to love anyone no matter what, right? So
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah, I totally, man, and that blows my mind that people can be so ignorant to that.
yeah.
Yeah, but then after it says that they can't provide
Yeah,
medical
the
benefits
last
to
part
gay partners, right? Kind of throws you off because like
yeah,
obviously they would provide benefits to like a straight marriage, right?
with no solid reason, but just because they're what they are.
Yeah, you're still marginalizing them, right?
Yeah, probably another form of cultural destructiveness. Sort of seeing them as not deserving of medical benefits.
So when it comes to like all the groups there, the only one that's really that I would kind of say is advanced competency would probably be the medical care one, honestly. Yeah. That seems to be the only one. Yeah. Yeah, but everything else is either kind of ignorant or kind of on the border at least.
But number one is the only one we haven't done yet, right?
Uh,
Or do we need special telephone lines for? Yeah, he's sort of disregarding like inclusiveness to disabled people, which
So that,
provide those.
sounds like cultural pre-competence there. Like he recognizes that there is difference, but he's not like complacent to making change, right? Like he's why would I, right?
Yeah, he recognized it. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's not like he's not bashing them or nothing, but he's definitely not sensitive to it, I guess.
Yeah. Also, with the cultural pre-competence, did we also say 8 is a form of it? Because it the sort of the first half is, since he does.
Yeah, eight's tough. It's tough because like he recognizes the differences, which is positive, but yeah, he is complacent in making the changes, right?
Yeah, and then the reason for that would be because he sees him as like a less superior culture, which would bring in sort of the cultural destructiveness.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's possible to be, a couple of these things at once, maybe. Yeah, like kind of. Yeah, exactly. Because like he is recognizing the differences and stuff, but he is still kind of being pretty negative, marginalizing them. Destructiveness, yeah. Because it's kind of
that's
like
what we were just mentioning.
it's kind of like blindness too, right? Because, well, actually, never mind. Or maybe.
Yeah, but I think the most would be the pre-competence and the destructiveness.
Yeah, totally. That's number 8. You're saying that, right? Yeah, I think so. I don't see any that we missed. I thought she said she was going to bring us back in at 5, so maybe we're just out here stranded.
No, she's probably taking an extra break or something.
Oh yeah, maybe she let her dog out or something. So, you guys feel like you got any interesting topics for your essay? Yeah. Oh, well. Oh, nice. That's a pretty cool topic.
Well, there's actually I was watching a show on psychedelics, and like at first when it was released, that was actually the main purpose they made them. It was like, yeah, for like it was for treating depression and also like suicidal thoughts. It was basically used in therapy, like it would help people like loosen up and stuff. I know it has psychedelics in the title, but then they basically interviewed like celebrities and asked them like their experience when they
Did you
had
find it on
acid or
Netflix?
LSD. Yeah, but it was pretty fun because it was like it showed how like society in the end didn't like accept psychedelics, and sort of they even started making like advertisements against them, saying, "Oh, if you take them, you're gonna die."
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they would show this video where someone has a bad trip and then just bursts out of a window and just falls down flat, dies. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Oh, yeah. I think I think the main issue like with that people had against it is like people would overdose on them, and I don't know, it's like whenever you overdose on anything, it's like usually not, it ends up being pretty terrible. So people would like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Hmm.
really?
Oh, I think it just does it
Like
just
you can get
increase
sick and
the
stuff,
amount of
no?
time that you're like in that state is when you take more of it, or is it still the same effect? Okay. Yeah, not die, but just like, because sometimes one other thing I read was it can like happen through an extended period if you take higher amounts. It's usually the yeah, that's what I was about. I read one like someone had it for like a whole 24 hours, and then if you don't take care, like you might have a, they call it a bad trip, and then you just yeah. Yeah. Oh,
What? Yeah, that's such an intro. Yeah, yeah. That's a pretty wild theory, man. Like, I never thought about nothing like that before because I put a lot of thought into like how the alphabet kind of came to be because there's no real reason why like A is in front of B or like
yeah, because
the direction that it's in. So it's like where that all kind of came from is kind of mystery.
it's like it was sort of all attributed to evolution. But if you think of it, like what really caused the evolution in language? Because maybe it might have just been of the body and brain. They could have still like talked like really randomly, or done like science and stuff. But what
Yeah,
really brought about the language? Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like the necessity to communicate, is obviously like a really big part of survival, right? So. Oh yeah, same. Like I've tried it as well, and like I've had multiple like experiences, good and bad. Like I've never had as bad as the lady you were talking about before there, but like it definitely gets you chatty. That's for sure. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah. It's from
Yeah,
I know
I've only
that's right
tried
on.
the manufactured ones, like the pill, but not like the actual mushrooms. I'm yet to see how those work. But I heard they're like stronger, I guess.
Yeah,
Have
no,
effects.
that's super interesting, man. That's super interesting. Like, I'd almost wanna take a little read at that myself, honestly.
Yeah.
How are we doing over here?
Oh, pretty good.
I made the link afterward.
Yeah. We discussed these things for a pretty decent amount of time there, but
Okay, cool. Sorry, I went into all the groups. We had really good discussions. So you guys are the last group, and then anyways, we're
sweet.
all over the place now. So if you want to get back into the class, we'll be going back soon. So I'll see you in a second.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I knew she was gonna come in and go like, "Oh, they're talking about psychedelics."
I know. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's just the whole time, eh? All right, I'll see you guys.
All right. You're not muted.
I couldn't find who it was to mute them. Oh, okay, we're almost all back. Sorry, there was some really good discussions happening in all the smaller groups. So some of us got a little sidetracked, and that's okay. That was the point. Kind of ran out of time because the discussion, I know that some of you, sometimes it's just nice to talk to other students in the class. So I know that some of you went through all the scenarios really quickly and then got to chat about other things. Totally okay with that.
Yeah, I caught somebody watching Netflix on mine. Totally called them out on it.
Definitely didn't see that, but okay. So we're gonna end. So just like I need to do like some kind of little close the loop ish, even though I'm running out of time. But I just wanted to. So the whole point of that was really to just discuss the different perspectives, the different interpretations that you have. These were like they kind of pulled at your heart for some of them, and some of them they made you mad, and that your reactions are valid for sure. And they were not necessarily the most detailed examples. I know one group really wanted more information, and they were expressly vague so that you could understand all the different factors that would play into some of these scenarios and decisions if we're talking about the more business examples. But I appreciate all of the discussions that you guys had. It was easier to do it in smaller groups, but really it's just about like the reactions that you had kind of indicated to you right off the bat whether or not this was something that needed to be improved. So some of you had like a guttural reaction to certain scenarios, and that's perfect because that we talked about whether or not we're reacting to certain things versus being more proactive in our approaches, and what the differences between what we do and what we actually say. So our beliefs versus our actions. So all of that plays into how do we improve our interactions, our cultural competence, and how do we move towards an environment in which everyone feels safe, everyone is valued, everyone is respected. But especially if we think about the example number 8, the fact that socially what's acceptable versus politically or legally what is acceptable, that's two very different things, because you can feel safe and welcome socially, but then the laws, the policies, whatever in the background that's in place doesn't necessarily respect or protect that. So we'll go into the last piece of the cultural diversity theme on Thursday, since the class is pretty much done. But thank you for participating. I'll kind of give you, well, not kind of, the PowerPoint gives you examples, not examples. For every example or scenario, they give you where it would fall more or less on that continuum. So it'll match kind of what you guys did discuss in the smaller groups, so that you'll have that as a point of reference. But yeah, that's what I have to say. Otherwise, I'll keep going because we had some really good discussions in the groups. So I'm going to end with that tonight. And as always, if you have any, I know some of you ended up talking about essays and topics in line with that. So if you have any final questions about the essay, I'll stay logged in. Otherwise, we'll stop there for tonight. And I will mention and reference all the rest of the stuff on D2L for Thursday's class. So thank you. Good night. And we will talk in 2 days.
Thank you.
Night.
Thank you.